Richard, today, part two of our interview with Fahad Nazer, who is official spokesperson for the Embassy of Saudi Arabia in the United States.
Another good segment. He talks a little bit about Saudi students in the U.S., some foreign policy issues, and an informative discussion.
Also talks about how he became a New York Jets fan, which we had to ask him. So let's get right to it. Part two of our interview with Fahad Nazer.
One of the things about dealing with the U.S. audience is they hear this, and for example, your audiences that you meet without into hinterlands when you go outside of D.C., they hear this Vision 2030, and they hear discussion of reforms, but they don't believe it, or they'll believe it when they see it. How do you get over this hurdle? In terms of a general U.S. audience, general public opinion of sort of hearing what Saudi Arabia is trying to do, but actually believing that they're sincere about it.
Right. So our outreach effort is multi-pronged, multi-dimensional. So obviously, as we've already discussed, I do a lot of speaking engagements with various groups. Her Royal Highness Princess Rima bin Bandar, who is our ambassador here, she does even more speaking engagements than I do. Some of it are private, some of it are public. She travels widely. Lucian has already mentioned some of the states that she has visited over the past couple of years. She's currently in California as we speak. She makes, I think, an incredibly favorable impression on people when she talks with them because she knows the United States. She essentially grew up here, lived here for 20 years, and I've heard her say many times that she loves the United States and has considered it a second home for her for many years, as is the case for many Saudis, myself included. So that's, I think that effort is ongoing, but at the same time, we do encourage Americans to go and visit because really there is no substitute for being there, being on the ground and seeing the changes. The changes are happening so fast that you can, if you spend a month, for instance, you can see them unfold right before your eyes. That certainly has been my experience. So when I was there last week, there were a couple of delegations I was actually accompanying. One of them, there was a business delegation from Colorado. Most of them had never been to the kingdom. And it is I think that's the most gratifying part of my job is that first 24 hours I spend with delegations, especially those who've never been to the kingdom. Once they soak things in, they look around, they talk to Saudis, and without being prompted or without me asking them, they come up to me on their own and say, we had no idea that this is going on in Saudi Arabia. We have heard so much about Saudi Arabia and read so much about it, but what we've read and heard has been just a snapshot, often just not an accurate picture, not an accurate depiction. Reality is so much different. It is so much more positive. I think one of the draws to Saudi Arabia, and granted I'm a little biased, but I think we do have a warm, welcoming people that we take pride in being gracious hosts. So that's one of the things that Americans experience is that welcoming nature of Saudis. Obviously, the fact that we do have all these opportunities, certainly for the business community, opening up is something that we're trying to highlight as much as possible. But it's not just foreign investors and foreign talent and innovators that we're trying to attract. We want anyone who's interested in learning about the world, really, and certainly the history of the region, because for the first time, we are showcasing some of our history and not just our Islamic history, which obviously we're very proud to be the birthplace of Islam, but we're going even further back to pre-Islamic history. One of the sites that we're showcasing is Al-Ula in the Northwest, and I had the privilege really of visiting it for the first time last week. It's awe-inspiring. It's like nothing I've ever seen, certainly very comparable to the pyramids in Egypt or Petra in Jordan. It's the same civilization that built Petra, built Al-Ula. Um, so while Vision 2030 is focused on creating a positive future for Saudi Arabia, part of it is also it's I think been able to create a newfound appreciation for our history, for our cultural diversity, for our heritage, and again, not just pre-Islamic, but even prehistoric. We have teams of archaeologists in the kingdom as we speak who continue to make finds that go back thousands of years, and some of them going back older than even older than the pyramids. They keep finding these kite-like structures all over the kingdom. Archaeologists have been just in awe and completely overwhelmed by all these findings. And again, this is the message is that we share a common history, certainly with people in the region, but the history of the world is not just ours, it's shared with people all over the world. And so we are opening up where we want people to come and to meet our people, to learn about things that are taking place now, to learn about our future plans. But I think we also want them to learn about our history that we share in common with people in the region and beyond.
We do a weekly episode of the 966 podcast, and because tourism is such a big pillar of the Vision 2030 plan, it's a recurring topic. But of late, we've been a number of discussions that Lucian and I have had about the archaeological things that are going on, and as you say, they're pre-Islamic. And it's just fascinating. Apart from Saudi Arabia's close relationship with UNESCO, and they have 6 heritage sites now, but as you say, the prehistoric and finding finger bones 85,000 years old, and some of these camel drawings that are having people rethink the whole nature of human existence, and as it as Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, but the Arabian Peninsula as a crossroads of human activity. It's really interesting stuff.
Indeed, yeah, and we're showcasing it for the first time, and I was elated to see. You said that think some of the projects we have, we realize that there's a little bit of skepticism, about. So Saudi Arabia as a global tourism destination, I think, is one of these notions that some people were skeptical about, but I don't think that's the case anymore, because I saw firsthand the tourists who are clearly from different countries from all over the world at Al-Ula. At FII, I saw people speaking dozens of different languages from, again, all over the world. We believe that we have a number of sectors that have simply not been developed to their full potential. And I think there the credit goes to His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who went before unveiling Vision 2030 back in 2016, I think took a complete survey of the political and economic and social landscape of the country, and correctly concluded that we had all these sectors that have just not been developed to their full potential because of the fact that we focused on the energy sector for so long, but that has changed. And I think, the tourism and entertainment sectors are maybe the most dramatic, an obvious example of what we've done over the past couple of, 5 years since the unveiling of 2016, because we essentially created 2 sectors from the ground up. And they have already employed hundreds of thousands of Saudis, both male and female. And I think we will continue to invest a lot of resources into both of them. It is my understanding that there's at least 2 Hollywood pictures that have begun production in Al-Ula, in Saudi Arabia. And I think we will expect to see more of that to come. So I think it's a very exciting to be in the kingdom. Certainly, every time I go, I'm struck by how many new initiatives and projects there are. And certainly people who've never been to the kingdom, I think, are all very pleasantly surprised to just see, how excited young Saudis are about their future prospects. And I think they're just pleasantly surprised to see that reality in Saudi Arabia is very, very different than the unfortunate negative, perception that's still out there.
Yeah, I think one's Kandahar, starring Gerard Butler, and I think the other is Desert Warrior, maybe starring Iraq. I'm not sure. Coming to your cinemas, shortly.
And the cello.
And the cello, yeah, that's already that's about
Right.
to arrive. Let's talk a little bit about Iran, and direct talks were initiated in April this year, and under the auspices of Iraq, as playing as host and mediator. And I think there's been 4 meetings to date. As with so many of these things, we don't know half of what's going on. But in general, what is Saudi Arabia hoping these engagements might lead to?
Right. So as a number of officials have already said, Iran is our neighbor. It has a great history. It has great potential, a great culture. We have always extended our hand in peace to Iran. However, ultimately, it is up to Iran to become a productive and a responsible neighbor of the international community. That is the ultimate objective of these talks that we're having. We're making sure that Iran fully understands our concerns. And these are not just our concerns, but I think we and the United States and much of the international community has made our concerns to Iran very clear going back decades. We're hoping, Saudi Arabia does enjoy great relations with the overwhelming majority of countries around the world, certainly with the majority, if not all, of our neighbors in the region. So it is up to Iran really to take this outreach and to essentially change course, and to it's not a big ask. All we're asking for is for Iran to play by the same rules as the international community, to respect the norms of the international community. That means you don't support militant non-state actors in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, or other places. And it also means not interfering in the domestic affairs of your neighbors. So if they do that, there really is no reason why Iran shouldn't enjoy great relations with Saudi Arabia as well as its other neighbors. But really, the ball is in their court.
There seems to be an effort on the part of Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region to turn down the temperature a little bit on disagreements and conflicts in the region. And this seems to be part of it. I'd say that Turkey seems to be making outreaches to the UAE and elsewhere. Saudi Arabia and Qatar resolved that dispute. So it'd be very encouraging to see some positive results come of this. Let's turn to a topic that you simply can't speak to, but we'd like to get your comments because, in the aftermath of the Abraham Accords that normalized relations between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and later Sudan and Morocco, there's sort of a regular drumbeat about when Saudi Arabia is next. And I was laughing the other day because there was this sort of a B-52 Stratofortress, flew around the Arabian Peninsula. Up the Gulf, up the Red Sea, and at various points along its flight, it was accompanied by aircraft from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and also from Israel. And there was a big, to-do about, is this meaningful? What is Saudi Arabia's stance on the Abraham Accords and normalized relations with Israel?
Right, so the kingdom's position on the Israeli-Palestinian dispute has been consistent for many years. In fact, it was the late King Abdullah who, way back in 2002, introduced what became the Arab Peace Initiative at the Beirut Summit that year. The initiative was endorsed by all 21 members of the Arab League, and it basically offers Israel full normalization with all of these nations in return for a just and comprehensive peace agreement with the Palestinians based on a two-state solution. That offer is still on the table. We're hoping that the Palestinians and Israelis go back to the negotiating table because we believe that for the region to enjoy any semblance of peace, and prosperity and stability. I think that core dispute has to be resolved. Not only has it brought a lot of pain and suffering to both Israelis and Palestinians and some of their neighbors, but it has also been exploited for years by terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and militant groups and terrorist groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis, who pay lip service to it to recruit followers and to raise funds. So if it is resolved, not only do we, obviously, it opens the door to peace and prosperity among all these nations, but at the same time, you defang and neutralize this false narrative that these terrorist groups have been advancing for many years.
Yeah, Fahad, thank you for your time today. I guess my final question, and you might be seeing this coming, but you are a New York Jets fan of the NFL, which first of all, I'm very sorry about the last few years.
Our condolences.
Our condolences. We're not in a better spot being fans of the Washington football team.
I was going to say, Lucian, the Redskins, or what used to be the Redskins, are having their own challenges.
Yes,
indeed. It's an annual thing for us. My question is, how did you become a fan of the Jets, and do you think the NFL could gain in popularity among Saudis?
Right. So thank you. Well, first of all, I'm not surprised that you asked me that question, Lucian. I did see it coming. So how did I become a fan? So I actually spent 10 years in New York. I attended high school there. I attended the United Nations International School, and I went to New York University afterwards before I came to DC. So I spent, it was a good length of time. I don't know why I chose the Jets over the Giants. I guess because the Giants were, obviously they had just won, I think, a Super Bowl when I first got to New York. So, I didn't just get on the bandwagon. The Jets were, and unfortunately, 20 years later, remain an underdog. So, so there was something appealing about them. I started watching, I think, back in 1991. So it's been a long time, 30 years. I wish their record was a little better, but I still have, I still love watching football. I think football in general has increased in popularity in the kingdom, and certainly many of the Saudis who've studied in the United States developed an appreciation and became fans of the NFL, and that remains with them when they go back to the kingdom. But sports in general is obviously one of these things that transcends borders and cultures, and so it has universal appeal. Saudi Arabia, as both of you gentlemen know, does have a predominantly young population, so it's not a surprise that sports are so popular. For many years, soccer was, and I think it remains the most popular sport. But again, the credit goes to our leadership, and including my own boss here, Princess Rima, who played an important role in advancing and promoting a sports industry in the kingdom. So over the years, our sports authority has attracted, let's see, we've had golfing tournaments, we've had Formula One, Formula E, we've had WWE, we can't forget them. We've had tennis tournaments, and I think there's very wide appeal for that. Not just, these events not only introduce world-class athletes to our, Saudi citizens, but at the same time, it introduces the world to our Saudi people and showcases some of our landmarks, because they do take place obviously in some of our major cities, or as a background, some of these World Heritage sites that we have. So it's a win-win situation for us. It also generates a sizable income and generates sizable jobs for Saudi men and women. So as far as we're concerned, it's a win-win. Now, having said that, I would like to see a lot more winning from the Jets. They play in a couple of days. Keeping my fingers crossed, but we'll see what happens.
They had that surprise win against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago, so that's great. We've been speaking with Fahad Nazer, who's spokesperson for the Saudi Embassy in Washington. Fahad is a subscriber of the Sustig News Review, a daily newsletter, which you can get at sustg.com. Fahad, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks, Fahad.
Thank you.
Thank you.